Good afternoon. I am here today, as promised, to answer some of your questions about anxiety, some of your specific questions. So if you remember, I asked people to go ahead and comment or private message me their specific questions about anxiety or certain things that they're anxious about. And this is just so we can kind of do examples. This is definitely not therapy, so let's keep that in mind. This is just examples, and I'm just gonna kind of extrapolate from what I get, because clearly nobody's sitting in front of me. And this is good for you guys to see kind of how this works when it comes to anxiety. So with that, I want to thank everybody who sent me private messages. I picked a couple out. I'm just gonna breeze through them really quickly, and then if you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to comment or private message me. So the first one I got was this: I worry about how people perceive me. Okay. With this one, I would wonder if this person has some deep-seated negative beliefs about themselves. Like maybe they think they're not worthy, maybe they think they're unattractive, maybe they think that, there's something wrong with them and that nobody would like them. So if this person was in my office, what I would do is I would start to challenge maybe some of those core beliefs. So if you will remember, we talked about previously about anxiety and some different components. There's the fight, flight, or freeze. So that's a real threat versus a perceived threat and what our bodies do. There's the cognitive distortions. There's the attempt to control our environment, again, to keep us safe. And then there's anxiety that can stem from really low self-worth or really negative beliefs about ourselves, negative beliefs about ourselves. So that would be this one. I would wonder if that is based on some negative beliefs. And then I would try to help that person shift them. So rather than focus on everything that's negative, I would say, hey, so tell me something positive about yourself. And then I'd really focus on that to start shifting some of those beliefs, which would take a while because it's a belief system. So belief systems are hard to change, but it's doable. And then you can imagine if that was able to shift, then that anxiety would diminish. So that's kind of how I would approach that one. And by the way, every single therapist is different. So there's therapists that maybe watch this and don't agree, and that's totally fine. That's just what I would do, okay? So again, I would consider this more of like a personal belief, core values type of anxiety issue, okay? The next one I got was that I feel like I always do everything wrong. And then the person worries about that. So then they find themselves kind of, double and triple checking, or maybe afraid to do anything because they're afraid they're going to mess it up. This one, I would say, is a cognitive piece. If you'll remember, we talked about those cognitive distortions, and part of those being when we hear words like always and never. If you find yourself having thoughts like, I always mess up, or I never do anything right, I would ask you to just stop for 1 second and recognize, wait a second, is that true? Because there's no way that this person always messes up. There's no way. So then I would want to shift that thought, right? Do you really always mess up? Tell me about a time you have done something right. Okay? So that's kind of a cognitive distortion, and we see those a lot with anxiety, but that's something I would try to shift a little bit, or help the client recognize, hey, you're falling into that cognitive distortion trap, and that's causing you to feel some anxiety. The next one I got is pretty tough, okay? And this one is one of those that actually could be a legitimate safety concern. So I'm not minimizing this worry at all. I think this is a super legitimate worry, and it might rub some of you guys the wrong way, but let's just jump into it. So the one I got was, I am worried when my kids go to school that they will be safe. That's definitely a legitimate concern. We've all seen the news. We all know that it is not necessarily safe in school. Maybe not. So this is hard because it could be a real threat. It really could be a real threat. So this one would be a tougher one to work with. And it's also one of those when we talk about control, right? Because I have to try to control my children and control the school environment and control everything, because then I feel safe, because heaven forbid something happened to my kid. And I completely understand that. But let me ask this question. What is the good of worrying constantly? You can't control what happens to your kid at school. unfortunately, but you can't. That's the reality. Could you do something differently? Sure, you could pull them out of school and homeschool them, I guess. There's that option. But if we're talking about your kid remaining in school and you can accept the fact that you cannot control what happens in school, then for you, that's the first step. Accepting I can't control what happens at school. Then the next step is how do you manage your anxiety when those thoughts come into your head, or when you find yourself having an anxiety response, a physical response that, oh my gosh, I sent my kids off to school today and now I'm just like this all day long. I'm in this like flight pattern all day long, right? I'm tense. My thoughts are racing. I can't eat. All of that stuff, right? It's about you managing your anxiety. So doing some thought work, hey, you know what? They're probably going to be okay. They go to a good school. We live in a good community. Whatever the thought work is. Doing some stuff to help your physical body relax, right? So that you get off of that negative feedback loop between the brain and the body telling you to stay anxious. And the other thing I would do is really difficult is to recognize I really can't control anything, and you got to accept that, and that's hard. So if you find that you're struggling with something similar to that, that's something that you might want to talk to a professional about, because that would, I think, take a little bit of work with a professional to help shift you on that one. Okay, I have one more that I'm going to talk about today. Of course, I had more come in, but this is the last one I'm going to talk about today. And if you guys like this, please let me know, and I can definitely do more. The last one I had was, I'm worried about spending time with my family during the holidays. Okay, I totally get that one. Absolutely. So the holidays can be really overwhelming for people. And while we probably all love our families, sometimes we feel anxious because we have too much time with our families. Sometimes we feel anxious because we don't have enough time with our families, things like that. What I would say about this one, and I don't know the specifics, I would say recognize your warning signs of anxiety when you're starting to get stressed out, and then take steps to manage that. Because you can't, this is one of those control things too, you cannot manage your family. You cannot control what your family does. You cannot control if you're at the table on Thanksgiving and somebody like chucks a turkey leg at you. Can't control that. You can control how you respond. So if you are going to your families and you're finding that you're getting overwhelmed or stressed out, I would highly encourage you to practice some relaxation skills, some breathing, progressive muscle relaxation, tightening and releasing those muscles, listening to maybe calming music or a podcast or something. The other thing is some thought work. Hey, I'm gonna be fine. Hey, if I get anxious, this is what I'm gonna do. Have a plan. Maybe you have to go outside for 5 minutes and take a break. Maybe you need to pull one of your family members aside and say, hey, you know what? If I get a little overwhelmed and I kind of give you a signal, can you come and just talk to me for a minute? Whatever you have to do, make a plan, stick to it. You'll get through the holidays. You absolutely will. And I know that it can be very overwhelming. I also know that you can totally do it. So that's all I have today. Again, if you have any questions, you can private message me or go ahead and comment below. As always, like and share these videos. And next time, I think I will do a little bit of managing through the holidays, because I actually have a lot of questions about eating during the holidays, how to interact with family members during the holidays, how to kind of survive the holidays. So I think that might be the next thing I'm going to do. So you guys stay tuned for that, and I hope you have a fantastic day. See ya.